Today, we're going to talk about the Fender Jaguar. What is Fender doing with this model? Are they going to continue to make a lot of Jaguars for us, or are they slowly pulling this model back out of the different series? There's been at least two cancellations of two major series in the USA-made guitars of the Jaguar, and we're not seeing it introduced at nearly the same rate as the Mustang and the Jazzmaster are within Fender's lineup. So I wanted to do a bit of an analysis on this, and as voted by the subscribers of this channel, this is the video that we're going to do next. Someone upstairs is having an episode. All right, so the Fender Jaguar, of course, was the last mainline model designed by Leo Fender during his time at Fender from the 1940s when he founded the company, the 1950s with the introduction of all the classic models and amps, and then the 1960s where they continued to develop and mature. In 1965, he sold off the company, of course, to CBS and never worked for Fender again until his death. The Jaguar was introduced in 1962 to set atop Fender's range of guitars with a price at the time of $379.50. The Telecaster at the time was $209.50, Stratocaster was $259.50, and the Jazzmaster is $349.50. And so if you adjust for inflation from 1962, then the prices today would be $3,858.16 for the Jaguar, $3,553.17 for the Jazzmaster, $2,638 for the Stratocaster, and $2,129.87 for the Telecaster, respectively. Thank goodness we are not paying that much for these models today. So thankfully the price has decreased. Fender has become the biggest manufacturer of musical instruments worldwide, or at least the most known brand, with the Stratocaster and the Telecaster instantly popping to any person's mind when you ask them to picture a guitar. They probably picture this one, or else they're picturing this one, and if not, then they're probably picturing a Les Paul. So let's dive into a bit of the more recent past as to what happened with the Jaguar. But basically, after its introduction, it was produced with a few small modifications until Fender ceased the production of the Jazzmaster and Jaguar in 1979 due to poor sales. By this time, they had the larger block logo, a more inflated headstock. Occasionally, you'd see them with a maple fingerboard, but most often they had binding and block inlays on rosewood. The pickups remain the gray bobbin ones that were revision that was introduced in 1965 or somewhere about then, and the guitars were then discontinued from the lineup, not to be seen again until Fender Japan started making replicas of the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar in the 90s, I do believe. I could be wrong on this, but this is just off the dome. I tried to research this a bit. So anyway, in the year 2017, Fender replaced their long-running American Standard series, which made the quintessential modern interpretations of the Stratocaster, Telecaster, precision bass, and jazz bass, with the American Professional series that we know today. It was the first revision of the American Professional series. While there were updates to these popular Fender models, the offset guitar enthusiasts rejoiced that there was not one but two of Fender's black sheep models that were in the main fold once again for the first time since 1979. Now, at this point, Fender had been making American vintage Jaguar and Jazzmasters probably since the mid-2000s is my best estimation. Maybe they did in the 90s too. So there had been production of Jazzmasters and Jaguars. And in addition, there were, by 2017, at least in 2014 or something, Fender was making, or through Squier, was making the vintage modified guitars. And I actually owned both. I own the Jaguar still, or the Jazzmaster still. I did used to own one of the Jaguars from that range. Sadly, I sold it, and that was a dumb decision, but someday I'll get another Jaguar, I suppose. But I do have a Jaguar bass, so at least I have some Jaguar in the game here. Yes, there were other American or foreign-made Jazzmasters, Jaguars, Mustangs, Bass 6s, Marauders, Starcasters, Coronados, and many more of Fender's less well-known models before the American Professional series was introduced. But finally, Fender was modernizing these weird and wonderful instruments for the modern professional mom's basement dweller, pro musician, who was going to buy these guitars. These guitars featured Michael Frank designed V-Mod pickups, simplified controls, fun colors, and screw-in vibrato arms instead of the vintage pop-in ones, much to the dismay of offset enthusiasts who love the pop-in arms. Let's see, what else? They both had bridges with non-adjustable Mustang-style saddles, albeit introduced with the wrong string spacing at the bridge that was too wide. The Jazzmaster and the Jaguar both removed their rhythm circuits for the American Professional versions. The Jazzmaster moved its three-way toggle switch from the lower bout to the upper bout, and then the Jaguar replaced the three slider switches that controlled the pickups on and off and the strangle switch with a four-way blade switch, similar to the Johnny Marr Jaguar at the time. And the fourth position, of course, offering both pickups in series with each other instead of just in parallel, like position 2 on the switch. Let's see, both guitars for the first time in an American-made Fender since the 1970s featured optional maple fingerboards that were unbound and featured dot inlays. So basically, since the 70s, there hadn't been maple-boarded Jaguars and Jazzmasters made in the USA. Right away, offset enthusiasts held their breath as the mighty Mike Adams, known by the internet username as Pusheen, wrote a blog post on Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar describing his thoughts. In case you live under a rock or are unaware of the offset guitar community, Mike is kind of like the dad of the community, and everyone looks to him for advice because he's been repairing and been a huge fan of offset guitars for many, many years. And so we really love him. And most of us take what he has to say as, we take it very seriously, so to speak. And I'm not here to say that, whatever Mike says is true, and anyone else who says anything contrary will be subject to being expelled from the community. That's not the case at all. It's just he has a lot of wealth of knowledge, and he's played so many vintage ones and owns a good collection of them, so he knows what he's talking about in how to make them better and what makes a good one. Mike has been repairing and playing offset guitars since at least the mid-2000s, I believe, and has shared his wealth of knowledge on the internet using Instagram and Mike and Mike's website for a long time. He now has a YouTube channel that's very successful, so you've probably seen it. If you're seeing this video, you've definitely seen Mike's videos, so because I'm a smaller channel, of course. He was the co-founder of Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar, but is no longer associated with them at this point in terms of employment or ownership. Anyways, Mike liked these new guitars being produced, but he did not enjoy, and I quote, the cold-sounding pickups or the screw-in vibrato arm. In addition, he found the string spacing at the bridge to be too wide, causing the E-strings to slip off the fingerboard if you did any bends or you kind of like grabbed it aggressively. It was easy for the strings to slip off. Fender did end up repairing this on future guitars made in the American Professional line. And when these guitars were released, I remember it, and I really wanted these guitars, and, I just had my two Squires, and I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to get an American Professional Jaguar Jazzmaster, and I still am hankering for the American Professional Jaguar. I think, my gosh, what a gorgeous guitar in that slate flat gray color or the olive drab. Man, those were good-looking guitars, so if I ever find one and I have the money, I might spring for one. But the American Professional Jaguar had one big problem, and that's that it was an awful lot similar to the Johnny Marr Jaguar that was at a similar price point, which featured nitrocellulose lacquer as a finish, bare knuckle pickups, and instead of a phase switch, it had twin strangle switches, so you could still get all the vintage Jaguar sounds sans rhythm circuit, with the addition of having one strangle switch only coming on when you go to the series position to help give you some lift in that position, and the other one just was global. And then it still had the four-way switch that lets you do the series mode. It had Mustang saddles as well. And so I think a lot of people who would have bought the American Pro Jaguar ended up buying the Johnny Marr, and so sadly, when the American Professional line was reintroduced in 2021 as the American Professional 2, the Jaguar was sadly dropped from this line, ending the mainline modern model production of the Fender Jaguar. In 2018, these American Professional offsets were followed by the Mexican-made Player Jazzmaster and Jaguar, which were severely modified from the vintage ones and should not be spoken of in the offset guitar community unless you're like kind of a Cobaniac or something like that. They had humbucking pickups in the bridge and modified saddles that were still height adjustable to keep the strings in place, which means that they don't have the advantage of Mustang saddles in that they don't buzz. They will fall down. You will need Loctite, but at least the strings are kept in a little bit better than the old threaded rod saddles. The vibratos were moved closer to the bridge. The Jazzmaster had 2 humbuckers, which were splittable by pulling up on one of the knobs. The Jaguar had a Jaguar pickup in the neck, at least, but it had a humbucker in the bridge, which was splittable with a slider switch where the upper bout where the rhythm circuit would normally be. It also used a 3-way blade switch instead of the traditional Jaguar slider switches to select pickups, thus meaning no strangle switch on this guitar. And sadly, 2 out of 3 of the beautiful chrome plates that traditionally adorn a Jaguar, observe 1 and 2, were removed and just feature a large pick guard, but still retaining a chrome control plate like this crafted in Japan Jaguar bass instead. The Player Series also incorporated the Offset Series guitars, which were the Hardtail Mustang and Hardtail Duosonic, and I guess a Hardtail Mustang is technically a Duosonic by vintage Fender specs, so I'm not really sure how they justified that. But anyway, they have a dual single coil Mustang and a dual P90 Mustang, a dual single coil Duosonic, and an HS Duosonic as well, where the humbucker can be split by pulling up on the volume knob. Surprisingly, Fender has not made any major updates to the Player Series, which I do have a guitar, the Player Series Strat right there. It's pretty good. The finish on the neck has chipped a little bit around some of the fret ends, which I do not like, but it does sound good, and it does look phenomenal. But yeah, they haven't made any updates to the Player Series, and it's been a long time. It's been 5 years since this line was introduced, so, from the looks of it, the Ventera line is getting an update with Ventera 2, but when is the Player update coming? Maybe Fender's on a 10-year schedule for the Player Series, but it would be cool to see an update of the Player Series, Jazzmaster, and Jaguar, and I'll talk about more of what I'd want from those in the future, towards the end of the video. The year-specific American Vintage Series was replaced with the decade-specific American Original Series in early 2018 in hopes of simplifying Fender's very complex and convoluted lineup, as well as adding the odd modern feature like a flatter 9.5-inch fingerboard radius instead of the vintage spec 7 1/4. This included the usual fare of 50s and 60s Strats, Tellys, Precision, and Jazz basses, but also the 60s Jazzmaster and Jaguar. Jaguar. I don't say Jaguar. I pretty much just say Jaguar. I don't know. That's just the pronunciation where I'm from. I'm in Oregon. We say things weird. The main difference in the Jaguar and Jazzmaster from the previous American Vintage 65 Jazzmaster and Jaguar were the flatter fingerboard radius and different colors. They use the same pickups, nitrocellulose lacquer finish, and hardware as the AVRI 65 Jazzmaster and Jaguar, but sadly, the matching headstocks were removed from this line, which is a bit too bad. In later 2018, the Mexican-made Ventera series was introduced to replace the long-running classic Player series. This line included both Ventera Vintage and Ventera Vintage Modified Jazzmasters and Jaguars. The more vintage line, or really what was just called Ventera, featured period-correct fingerboard radii of 7 1/4 inches, vintage voice pickups, and vintage-style hardware and appearances. So these look very much like the old guitars. The Ventera Jaguar featured just about everything from a vintage Jaguar, aside from the switchable foam mute that was on the American Original and American Vintage 65, I believe. It's definitely on the original. I can't remember if the 65 has it or not. AVRI 65. And then the Ventera Vintage Jaguar had a flatter 9.5-inch fingerboard radius, a pair of humbucking pickups, no rhythm circuit, and an adjustomatic bridge. And in place of the rhythm circuit, it still had the same controls, but the rollers were now used to progressively split the humbuckers, so you could basically turn down one of the coils of the humbuckers. I'm not sure how this works because they're wired in series, so I don't know how you can do that, but I guess it works somehow. I've never played one, so I couldn't tell you. Basically, this guitar is just, it's a rebadging of the classic Player Jaguar, which the Ventera Jaguar HH Modified replaces. The Ventera Jazzmaster features similar treatment, which I'm not going to talk about due to the sake of time. Anyway, the American Performer Series was introduced also in late 2018 to replace the American Special Series, which is the most affordable USA-made Fender guitars. But this lineup did not include a Jaguar, sadly. But it did include a Jazzmaster with a Strat bridge, as well as a Mustang with a three-way switch instead of its little fiddly slider switches as well. So, and then they also had weird like matte finishes, satin finishes. There's a Mustang with a humbucker in the neck, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's the American Performer. And really, since the Player Series and the Ventera Series, there has not been any major Jaguar models introduced since then. And so, like I was alluding to earlier, with the introduction of the American Professional 2 series to replace American Professional Series, in 2021, the Jazzmaster was updated with more traditional-looking controls, new pickups, a new vibrato system called the Panorama, which is the very first Fender redesign of the offset vibrato system since its introduction in 1958. This is incredible, really. It's just awesome. And it allows for a wider range of travel, letting you finally do dive bombs on your Jazzmaster. I almost said Jaguar, but they didn't make a Jaguar. The Jaguar was dropped from the American Professional 2 lineup, so there's no American Professional 2 Jaguar, unfortunately. Only 4 short years of mainline Jaguar from Fender had come to an end, and I presume this is just due to slower sales, as why else would they discontinue it? Unless the CEO just really hates offset guitars. Oh, wait. He doesn't hate them, but he thinks they're not as good. The American Vintage 2 series was introduced to replace the American Original series and went back to and sees Fender returning to that year-specific model rather than having the decade-specific one, so that Fender can offer more models to appeal to more people at the expense of every beginner going, I want a Fender, but there's so many models to choose from. Guess I'll have to buy them all. But yeah, although Fender would have you believe that all of these models have period-correct specifications, a Stratocaster made brand new in 1954 and even all the way into the 60s would not have a 5-way blade switch as Fender is shipping on their Stratocasters. So yeah, they say made to the exact vintage spec, every single spec, but then they aren't. So Fender, get your crap together. Stop marketing stuff wrong. Once again, there was a beautiful Jazzmaster, this time the 66 Jazzmaster, but sadly, the Jaguar was gone. So no more Jaguars in the American Professional or the American Vintage line. The Jaguar finally was kicked from the American Vintage line and American Original line, kicked to the curb, left to die, replaced with a whole slew of Cunafé magnet tellies from the 70s. So, what Jaguars are still being made today? Let's not moan and groan about this if there's still a lot available, right? So there are currently only 5 Fender-branded Jaguars in production, according to Fender's website. However, if you include the left-handed Kurt Cobain and the additional finish on the limited edition, like yellow finish on the Johnny Marr Jaguar, then it brings it to 7. We'll talk more about the difference between the counting later, but you can go on Fender's website and look for yourself. So, these guitars are as follows in order of most to least expensive. So at the top, we have the Johnny Marr Signature Jaguar, which is the only Jaguar still being made in the USA. And it costs $2,549.99 for the special yellow color. I can't remember. It's not graffiti yellow. It's some other yellow. I'll put it on the screen. And then the white and the knockout, the like orange, like tangerine, it's kind of maroon orange combined together, is $2499.99. These guitars feature bare knuckle pickups, a 4-way blade switch offering both pickups in series as well as parallel, and dual strangle switches, or Fender's calling them bright switches, but I'm assuming they're cutting bass. So yeah, and one of them is only turns on when you flick to the series position to give you a cut when you get to that position so that it fits in with the other positions a little bit better. This is a really great feature and should be on every guitar that has a series switch. And then there's a global strangle switch as well that's available. Next, we have the most expensive Mexican-made Jaguar, which is the Kurt Cobain signature Jaguar, which is also available in left-handed, where it's identical, and that's where the extra model comes in. So the 2 extra models, there's really 5 models, but on Fender's website, it counts it as 7 because there's the extra Johnny Marr in the additional color that costs more, and the Kurt Cobain left-handed. So, the Kurt Cobain Jaguar, signature Jaguar, you've probably seen this. It's in sunburst. It's got dual DiMarzio humbuckers. It's got a 3-way toggle for pickup selection, and it retains the rhythm circuit, and it also has an adjustomatic bridge, I do believe, as well. The Ventera 60s Jaguar Modified HH retailed for $1,379.99, but now it is on sale for 20% off at $1,099.99. Good grief, I hate saying 99. Can we just go back to like frickin' whole dollar amounts? Like, I don't understand. It's a dumb American thing. This guitar, like the Kurt Cobain one, has dual humbuckers. Like I said earlier, it's got the variable coil splitting, adjustomatic bridge. Vibratos move closer to the bridge. You get a kill switch, strangle switch, 9.5-inch fingerboard radius. Unfortunately, it has Pau Ferro fingerboard. And then we move to the Ventera 60s Jaguar, which used to retail for $1,249.99, but now it's on sale for $1,000 minus 1 cent. And it has a matching headstock with the body color, which is very cool, aside from sunburst, of course. And it has the 7.25-inch fingerboard radius, the vintage one, vintage bridge, vintage controls. The only thing it doesn't have that's vintage is the mute. There's then at $879.99 is the Player Jaguar, which I don't like very much, but at least it's there. At least it's in the lineup, and I'm sure there's lots of people who enjoy theirs. It has a bridge humbucker. It has a slider switch on the upper bout to split the humbucker. It has modified saddles with 1 deep groove instead of the threaded rod saddles. It has a 3-way switch for pickup selection, and it has no chrome plates aside from the one with the knobs and the output jack, and it has the black panel amp knobs, which I absolutely do not like on Fender guitars. I don't know why they keep doing it on like the Blacktop series. There was those. I actually liked them back in the day, but now looking back, I'm like, don't like them. The only guitar that should have them is the Starcaster, and that one has modified ones. For now, there's only 2 Squier Jaguars, and there's a lot more Jazzmasters and Mustangs in the Squier lineup, so this is really interesting. There, at the top of the Squier lineup for Jaguars, we have the contemporary Jaguar HHST at $469.99. By the name, this obviously has 2 humbucking pickups and a stop bar tailpiece. It also has a black painted headstock, which is very cool. It has a coil split and series parallel switches on the upper bout, which is nice. A roasted maple neck, an adjustomatic bridge, sculpted neck heel, and a 12-inch fingerboard radius. If you love the Jaguar shape, you love the Jaguar scale, but you want humbuckers, get this guitar. I guess Kurt Cobain has literally left an indelibly stamped impact on Fender in which they cannot not offer a humbucking Jaguar at any price point. And I guess that's the Kurt Cobain effect. The Classic Vibe 70s Jaguar is now retailing for $459.99, a drop of $20. It used to retail for $479.99, so I just saw that today on the Fender website. It has binding and block inlays on an Indian Laurel fretboard. Boo, those suck. I hate Laurel. It's it's got these long grooves in it that I don't like. And I do have a guitar with Laurel fingerboard, and that's the Cabernita Baritone Telecaster. It's okay. I mean, the Classic Vibe 70s Jaguar, like I said, binding and block inlays on a Indian Laurel fingerboard, Fender design pickups, which are better than the Duncan design ones, which were horrible. I had the vintage modified Jaguar with the Fender design or the Duncan design pickups, and they were just nasty. They did not have good top end. They were rubbery, cardboardy, mid-forward, thin at the same time. They sounded like you were permanently like running an EQ pedal with 700 hertz just boosted way up and everything else turned down. They were not good. They were bad. So these ones are a lot better. I've played them. The bridge pickup's a little bit overwound for a little more punch when you flip to it. It's got Mustang saddles on the bridge, which is nice. Traditional Jaguar appearance and controls, minus the mute, of course. And it has a 9.5-inch fingerboard radius. If I were buying a Jaguar today, that's the one I would buy because that's the one I could afford, and that's the one that I like. So let it be known that this lineup has great vintage models and some great modern models from Fender all the way down to Squier. We have a Jaguar that retails for $2,500, all the way down to a Squier that retails for $459. But I am sad that there's no Jaguars made in the mainline American Vintage and American Professional lines. And you might be saying, well, 7 Jaguars is a lot of Jaguars. How many Stratocasters could Fender make? Too many. 74 Stratocasters in the Fender lineup. That's too many. So let's do a breakdown of this. I decided to go crazy and read off how many models and calculate percentages. So it turns out there are 74 branded Fender Stratocaster models, 49 Telecasters, 12 Jazzmasters, 5 Mustangs, and there's 15 other Fender models as well. That means the Jaguar now constitutes 4.3% of Fender's lineup in the Fender branded lineup, not including Squier. In the Squier lineup, we got 30 Strats, 21 Tellys, 9 Jazzmasters, 2 Jaguars, 5 Mustangs, and 4 others for a total of 71. This puts the Stratocaster at 42.3%, 29.6% for the Telly, 12.7% for the Jazzmaster, 2.8% for the Jaguar, 7% for the Mustang, and the others at 5.6%, which includes mostly Starcasters and some other mystery model that I don't remember. If we add everything up together, we get a similar percentage to the other one. They're pretty much distributed the same across the Fender and the Squier lineup. So we have 104 Strats, which is 44.6% of 233, 70 Tellys, which is 30% of 233, 21 Jazzmasters, which is 9% of 233, 9 Jaguars, which is 3.9% of 233, 10 Mustangs, which is 4.3%, and 19 others, which are 8.2% of 233, which is the total number of models offered by Fender that are electric guitars. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of models. And, the fact that there's even one Jaguar in the lineup is great. And it used to be that there was none. And it was like, maybe you could get a Japanese-made one. Maybe you couldn't. Maybe you had to buy an old one. And so with the used prices that went up, now it's great that there's lots of new ones from Fender available. But, the fact that there's so few Jaguars in the lineup suggests that people just weren't buying them. They weren't buying the American Professional Jaguar. They were buying the Johnny Marr instead. So Fender kept making the Johnny Marr. They weren't buying the American Vintage one, so Fender stopped making it, or the American Original, sorry. So I think that that's really the reason. And most big companies, they'll sell what people will buy, and they won't sell what people won't. Like manual transmission cars are going out of, like hardly any automakers are making manual transmission cars, and that's because no one's buying them, right? Like they would keep making them if we bought them, but we don't. So yeah, that's what's going on there, I think. What about the future, though? How can we predict the future? Well, we can predict the future when people leak stuff on their website. So the Spanish retailer in July 22nd accidentally released all of the Ventera 2 models that they had been putting onto their website secretly to the entire public. And people caught wind of this, of course, and took lots of screenshots, some of which I will display right now. And the Ventera 2 series replaces Ventera, and this shows that there will be a new Ventera Jaguar, which is great to hear, that the Jaguar is not going away. It's still staying in the Ventera series, at least, with a maple fingerboard, black binding, and black block inlays. It looks very 70s cool, and I really want one if I could afford one, but I can't right now. And this is great. The Jaguar is continuing on. It has a legacy to continue. However, because the Ventera modified guitars, like the Jaguar Ventera modified HH, whatever the heck that thing is, with that guitar going away with the introduction of Ventera, now we're just going to have one Ventera Jaguar, which means that the number of Jaguars in Fender's lineup is now going to go down to only 6, which will make it an even smaller percentage of Fender's lineup unless they introduce another Jaguar somewhere else. So, to wrap all of this up, it is a little bit hypocritical of me to say, Fender, stop not making the Jaguars, when I've only purchased one, and that was really my mom and my grandma buying it for me, not me, myself. Although I did buy this Jaguar bass secondhand, which is pretty cool, I think. And yeah, just look at that thing. Oh yeah, it's pretty sick. But, I just wanted to make a video to point out the trend that there's lots of Jazzmasters and Mustangs being introduced, but there's not new Jaguars being introduced, at least not very many of them. And it's definitely taking a backseat when compared to other models like the Starcaster or the Jazzmaster or the Mustang. Like the new Sonic series that Squier introduced has 2 Mustangs, both hardtail, one with humbuckers and one with single coils, as well as a Jazzmaster. I thought there was one anyway.
And you thought wrong.
Anyway, it is what it is, and it's probably due to slow sales. So I guess that's the story. But here's my wish list for you, Fender. Please bring back the American Professional Jaguar and the American Vintage Jaguar. I'd love to see a 61 or 62 or 63, maybe even a 79. Give us the one with the maple fingerboard. That'd be cool. I'd love to see an American Pro 2 Jaguar or American Pro 3, who knows, with better pickups. And, maybe just, you could give us the Johnny Marr switching, or just give us a 3-way blade, or, or something like that. And then, I don't know what you would do with the rhythm circuit. Maybe just leave it alone. That's fine. I'll take a rhythm circuit, But I do hope for the player Jaguar. This is the one I really want to see updated. And I want to see one with dual single coils. You have dual, or 3 single coiled Strats and dual single coiled Tellys. Why are you making the offset guitars have to be humbuckers or HS configurations? So I'd love to see it with single coil pickups. The new player Jaguar, single coil pickups, dual Jaguar pickups, Mustang saddles with the right string spacing, more chrome plates like the old ones. I'd be fine with a blade switch or an HH version, but please just make a single version. Put the vibrato back where it's supposed to be, and I'd be pretty happy. And I don't feel like that would be that much money to make, but maybe it would be. And maybe you don't need to do the chrome plates. You could even go with the pick guard, just the big pick guard like you have on this one. So anyway, all this to say, let me know your thoughts. You can click the join button down in the description if you want to become a member of the channel and support it. You can help me make decisions about what videos to make in the future, like the poll that I used to decide to make this video. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. You don't have to join if you don't want to. There's no pressure. I just would appreciate it, and it's available. And then, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you like the Jaguar? Do you think it's the dumbest model ever made? Let me know. Do you have a Jaguar? Tell me about it. I'd love to chat in the comments. Leave a like if you like, and dislike if you don't. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.